Welcome to Geeks and Grounds, a monthly game club where we play games and brew good conversations together. My name is Jenny Wyndham.
And I'm Joel Thomas.
And we're getting ready to play some more Bramble, talk about some Bramble together. But how's your week been going so far, Joel?
Oh, what a week. I don't even know. I will say this. I got into the Bramble games last night, and I was like, I gotta keep going because I'm not gonna be able to sleep if I stop now. How about you?
My gosh. I did stop, but again, fair warning to anyone new to the podcast. I have played the game before, so I was like, I know it's coming up. I'm excited to just pause. But yeah, I did pause and I was like, I'm itching to play more, which was really cool. I've been really enjoying the game this month. For those new to the podcast, welcome. We are an extension of the club Geeks and Grounds, where primarily it's newsletter focused. So if you haven't signed up for the newsletter, please visit geeksandgrounds.com. That's where you can get the newsletter every week, read the FAQ, learn more about it. But basically, we're like a book club, but for video games. And what we do through this podcast is also talk about just what's going on in the industry, other things that we're reading, consuming, watching, and enjoying. And of course, deep diving into these sections of the game that we're playing each week so that you can think about them in maybe a different way or get some affirming comments and stories for your own experience. And hopefully, in listening, you can share your experiences with us as well.
Maybe as you're laying awake in bed at night, terrified of a section of Bramble, you can just imagine there are hundreds or thousands of fellow Geeks and Groundsians also not sleeping because they played Bramble.
Oh my gosh, my dream. I would love for that to be the case. And then we'll all play something just like very cozy later, just so that we don't have totally interrupted sleep schedule.
Oh, oofa doofa.
Yeah, but so we'll kick off with the Pastry Case, our grab bag of topics to allow folks to just learn a little bit more about what's going on in the industry and in our own lives, aside from what we're all playing together. The first bit of news in the indie sphere, I last time or two episodes ago, I said what I thought was going to be our final Unity update. We have one more. Yeah, just one more note just to make sure that y'all know what's going on, because again, for those of you who aren't familiar, Unity, which is a very widely used game engine, it's the thing that game developers make their titles on, had a bit of controversy, to put it mildly, a few weeks ago with the new runtime fee pricing model. You can definitely look up all the information on that. The issue itself is primarily over for now, but the Unity CEO, John, and apologies, I'm going to do my best to pronounce his last name correctly, but there's a lot of letters. Riccatello?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Maybe? But John has retired. The CEO has retired effective immediately as of Monday, October 9th. So
Congratulations, community. You have defeated the real life Bramble King.
yeah, we'll see. I'm like kind of skeptical. I think across the industry, this was seen more as a win than anything else, but I don't know if this is going to actually change anything in the future coming up for Unity, because the board is still the same. So the decision makers behind a lot of these policies are still there. So I anticipate we're probably seeing this as a blood sacrifice, tribute to the masses type of thing. Like, I think the PR was just so bad. They were like, we need something to happen to show people that we're sorry, and this is what's going to have to be the case.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know if you have any thoughts.
I mean, I don't know how he's going to sleep at night with his millions of dollars. It's just like, I feel terrible for him.
Ducking, yeah. Yeah, the fact that he is retired, not fired, like, it feels...
Enjoy your pension, sir.
Yeah, there's probably some... Yeah, he's not going to be wanting for much, I assume. So I'm not really stressed about him personally.
Yeah, I feel exactly the same.
Yep.
But hot labor summer continues into hot labor fall.
It really has. Actually, as of today, what's today? October 12th is when we're recording this. SAG-AFTRA has posted that they have not been able to come to an agreement still, that some of the offers that the discussions, I guess, revealed were worse than previous offers. So, unfortunately, SAG-AFTRA are still in talks and have not reached a resolution.
Absolutely bonkers.
Yeah. So, but I think what's been really honestly heartening is the fact that we are seeing more and more industries come out with talks of unionization,
Hmm.
more and more pushing for better quality of life at work. So it is a net positive long term. It just is really rough right now for all of the folks kind of everywhere at this point.
Yeah, I agree. I'll tell you, as a person who works in the tech space, not in video games, I have wondered for years about whether or not we will see engineers, developers start forming unions in the tech
Mhm.
space. And what feels like is true is that so long as we are paying these people very well and giving them these incredible like benefits packages and things that like it's kind of like, oh no, like I get compensated really well, so like I'm not gonna like do any sort of push to form a union. But what I am seeing across the industry is so many engineering roles being looking at overseas teams to fill them, and it's the same thing that it is in every industry from the last 200 years since the industrial revolution. It's
Mhm.
just like if businesses think they can find a cheaper way to get something done, they're going to do it. And historically in the States, we have not done a good job of ensuring that our workers have any sort of protection from those types of things. So in fact, I think there are parts of the tech industry that are currently like forbidden from unionizing. And I don't
Wow.
know. We'll see how that goes, but it's just the indicators are not looking great.
Wow. Dang, I didn't even think about yeah, because my familiarity is primarily within like video games, but I hadn't thought about even that other parts of the tech industry would forbid their workers from unionizing. Uh yeah, so we'll be keeping y'all posted on it because it's super important to talk about. It's really, really important to not get tired, I guess, or desensitized or sort of fatigued. I know it can be difficult because I think, especially with the way the news cycles work, we kind of are trained to move on to the next thing after about a week. But it's important that we just revisit this and we remind ourselves that this is a long term thing that we're really fighting for.
That's right.
Um, yeah.
I believe, on a lighter note, some big events in the Steam world have been happening over the last week.
Yes, one thing that does last for 1 week, and is much better than the news cycles is the Steam Next Fest. So, for folks who are listening to this as the episode drops, the Next Fest will have just concluded. But for people who don't know what the Steam Next Fest is, if you enjoy playing PC games, you probably know of a platform called Steam, and it's where you can download games, purchase games, and play them. And what they do is, I think, 4 times a year, I think it's 3 or 4 times a year, they, for 1 week, release a bunch of demos that folks can try and play for a limited time and get a sense of what's coming out in the year to come. Um, it used to be like way back in the day when this started, you could put your demo in as many times as you wanted as a developer. Now, it's a little bit more they've strategized it a little bit more, so it's not really the same demos getting submitted every time. The demos that are submitted have to have a launch date after the Steam Next Fest, and you can only submit your demo to one, so you have to be a little bit more strategic. You want to do it right
Ooh.
before you actually launch. So what, as a consumer, what's nice is that this kind of ensures that what you're playing is coming out probably within the next year or even 6 months. I think I've seen more developers use it as a strategy for like right before launch to like reactivate folks.
Hmm.
Um, But yeah, I'm curious if you've had any chance to dive into some demos this week.
I have not. So I'm here to learn from you to see what your tops have been, what's been standing out. I've definitely seen a lot of
Yeah.
chatter in the community. So what's been striking your fancy?
Yeah, well, I'd love to kick off with one of our community member submissions. Caliste mentioned American Arcadia as so far the winner for me. I'm reading Caliste's comment. American Arcadia is so far the winner for me. I haven't played many though. Firstly, the art style is awesome, and Sissy Jones is a voice actor. It does a great job with introducing you to the world of our American Arcadia and realizing something isn't quite right. For me, the demo was a perfect example of what a demo should be. It quickly immerses us in the story, teaches the gameplay fundamentals, and leaves us wanting to play more. Um, I don't know if you have the Steam page up for it, but did you want to read the description for American Arcadia, Joel?
Yeah, I'd love to. American Arcadia is a cinematic puzzle game that combines a 2.5D platformer and first person game to tell the tale of a thrilling escape. Wow, that was bad. Experience the extraordinary story of Trevor, an American. An average man escaping the world's most popular reality TV show. Is this like a Truman Show type thing?
I don't know. I have not played it yet. This is on my list, so I'm really happy that Caliste mentioned it because I just downloaded a bunch of demos and I hadn't heard of this before. So I'm excited to dive in based on what Caliste said. It looks like some sort of Truman Show inspired,
Oh.
like point and click adventure. So I cannot wait.
You know,
Yeah.
I'm gonna reference it again. I know we've mentioned it a lot on this show, but clicking through the screenshots, and there is a lobby
Hmm.
of some corporation, and you know what it looks just like is the lobby from Severance. The
Severance.
Yeah,
God,
uh,
Severance, sponsor us. We love your show.
Severance, come back, please. Season 2. Wait, is it
Yeah.
Struck Material? We probably shouldn't be plugging them. In any
Oh,
case,
yeah, that's true.
apologies. Take it back. Don't watch Severance. Not right
Yeah,
now.
wait until SAG-AFTRA passes
Yeah.
through, then we can watch it.
But yeah, like it's giving that like kind of like 1950s noir,
Mhm.
but also like 1950s futurism. So like the way people in the
Right.
50s like envision the future. That's kind of the vibe of this design. Yeah, I'm really kind of gripped by this style. It's very cool.
Yeah, the lighting in these screenshots look beautiful. I'm always a fan of kind of broad scale sort of environments and scenes, and this definitely looks like it has it.
Hmm.
And for folks who are curious, it's again American Arcadia, developed by Out of the Blue Games and published by Raw Fury. Um, the next community submitted, actually, this one there's three from Valis. Community submitted game demos. The first is My Work Is Not Yet Done, an enigmatic one bit game about a research team in the woods and what happens when you find something you shouldn't have found. Uh,
Ooh.
Joel, did you want to take on the Steam description of this one?
All right, we're gonna do it. I'm gonna read it really well this time, guys. I promise. My Work Is Not Yet Done is a narrative driven investigative horror game, combining elements of the survival simulation genres with a dense, non linear plot, exploring the imbrication and dissolution of human identities, meanings, with uncanny wilderness. I do
Mhm.
not know the word imbrication. Let's look that one up. Uh, this is an educational podcast as much as anything else. It's an adjective. Okay, a verb meaning overlap or cause to overlap.
Mm,
So there we go.
interesting.
Looking through kind of the images here, like think like the most like rudimentary pixel styling. It looks like it's pretty much in grayscale. But wow,
Mhm.
for it being kind of extremely like pixelated, pixel styled, like the detail is pretty incredible. Like,
Yeah, this is really beautiful. For folks who maybe are familiar with the title, a reference, perhaps visually, is like what is it, World of Horror? That may be a good one. It's definitely like if you're if you don't like a lot of dithering with your pixels, like there's a lot of dithering where you can see sort of the textures of the pixels. I personally like it. I think it's a really interesting visual texture. I know some folks I've talked to are like, I don't like that at all. So definitely take a look at the screenshot, see if it's for you. But this is another one I downloaded and was very excited to play. Yeah, it looks good. It looks really, really good.
Very fun. What else
And
you got?
again, and just to shout out, the developer is Sutemi Productions and the publisher is Raw Fury for this one. Another Raw Fury title.
Raw
I
Fury,
feel
come to
like Raw
play.
Fury has been doing really well,
Mhm.
because I think they also did, like, Cassette Beasts, which came out this year that was really good. Yeah.
Yes.
Raw Fury, good job this year. Um, the next one that Valis recommended was Good Bones, a chill horror game that looks to investigate what it means to suffer loss and to mourn. This one I'm really looking forward to. I follow the creator on TikTok. Um, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, she actually is like ex Riot. She was one of the women who actually came forward and was like, "Hey, these are all the like bad things that are happening at Riot." I'm like, she really was one
Ooh.
of the people who like spoke out. Eventually left Riot, started her own thing, and like this is the project that she's been working on since leaving. Um, I've been very excited for it. What does the Steam description say, Joel?
Should we do a British accent? No. Okay. Uh, your new house has old secrets in this haunting point and click mystery where you'll search for clues about the mysterious death, solve narrative puzzles, and make heartbreaking choices to navigate amnesia, grief, and revenge.
Nice.
Clicking through our images here, there's like looks like some kind of witchy occult
Mhm.
elements. The character design reminds me a lot of Paper Girls, if any of you are familiar with
Mhm.
that Image Comics story. Wow, it looks very, very cool. So you said you follow this creator.
Yes, on TikTok, and I feel so horrible. I never TikTok for me is a place where I spend a lot of time, but I genuinely remember maybe 1% of the creators I actually follow. I just have the worst memory. So let me really quickly look up her
Yeah.
handle or at least her publisher name
Yeah, so
or
it's coming from Retcon
again.
Games, the developer and
Yeah.
publisher series. And it very much like the kind of pastels, what those in the know might refer to as bisexual lighting.
Mhm.
Definitely the color palette of choice here. Looks very cool.
Cool. Yeah. And Retcon Games is the handle on TikTok if anyone is interested in following Jess there. And
Very
then the
cool.
final recommendation from Valis is Turnip Boy Robs a Bank. And the one sentence summary, which I think is perfect, is Turnip Boy is back and he has a gun. And for those who don't know, Turnip Boy was actually there was a different game called Turnip Boy Commits Tax Evasion. It's a very fun, very silly pixel art game that has the stylings of like a Zelda, like a classic Zelda, where you collect items, you use them to solve sort of singular dungeons, and you walk around and talk to
Hmm.
people and do quests. But what does it say for Turnip Boy Robs a Bank for the Steam description?
Oh, this is so very good. Turnip Boy is back! This time he's teaming up with the fearsome pickled gang to plan and execute the weirdest heist of all time. Shake down hostages, steal precious valuables, battle the fuzz, and use wacky tools bought off the dark web to move further into the vaults of the Botanical Bank.
Nice. It's a heist, and I just had to because I got this way back in the day, but I have my own
Oh,
very own turnip boy. For those who are listening, I'm holding up just, the makeshift plushie turnip boy that I got when the original game came out. It's very cute. This game is the best. Yeah, I'm
oh
very
my.
excited. I like that we have sentient fruits and vegetables that do crime. I like this part of the timeline that we're on.
This has like big 90s like absolutely wild concept somehow got funding to become this incredible success energy.
Yes. And actually, I'm looking on the Steam page and Oh, wait, never mind. I was gonna say in July they had a 2.0 run of the plushies. So perhaps with the success of the sequel, they may do another third run of the plushies. If you're interested, hit them up, let them know. These folks are Snoozy Kazoo, that's the developer, and the publisher is Graffiti Games. So those were the community recommendations. Really quickly, I wanted to share just my top three, just to go like kind of quickly. There were way more than three that I've played. Um, but these are ones that I feel like maybe a bit more underrated or like not as widely talked about that I've seen on social media and I'd love to highlight just to make sure people don't miss it. The first is Animal Planner. um, Basically, Animal Planner is a puzzle game where you move animals around based on their personal preferences. And you try to. Okay, did you ever play the puzzle game where it's like you have two sides of a lake shore and you have a chicken, a wolf, and a fox, and you got to move them
Ah.
across the lake, but the chicken never can stay with the wolf, and the fox hates the chicken, and it's like that kind of relational logic puzzle.
Yes.
That's Animal Planner. So you start and you have, gosh, I forget what it is. You have like pigs that love to stand by cabbage, and sheep who love to stand by grass, but they don't like to stand by the wolves. And so you have to arrange all the creatures in this like three
Oh.
by four grid so that all of the conditions are met and they're all happy. It's really fun. This game, I think, is quite like unassuming. I feel like people maybe look at it and think, "Oh, it's maybe very simple." And it is, but I think that's where the beauty in it lies. It's
Hmm.
just very, very fun.
It looks like if Sudoku were cute,
Yes.
that's what it looks like.
Yeah, it is kind of like a cute Sudoku. I think anyone who likes puzzle games, like this is definitely something to check out. I really hope eventually they can somehow bring this to mobile because
Oh, I
this
bet
would
that
just
for
be
sure.
perfect on mobile.
Hmm.
Um, And the second title that I loved, and I'll let you kick it off by reading the Steam description, and I'll talk more about what it was like to play, was Ete, and it's spelled
Yes.
ETE.
Ete is a relaxing painting game where you freely explore a city in the summer, collecting ideas in your album, creating artworks on canvas, and decorating your studio by selling your art to your neighbors.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's a game about painting. And what I loved is that the world starts kind of washed out and gray and
Oh,
blue, kind of like
cool.
a watercolor sketch that hasn't been filled with color, but just has the outlines for it. And as you walk around, you can click and paint things. You have a paint stamina bar that the more you paint and you unlock basically bubbles of inspiration and color, you can
Oh.
almost like RPG like upgrade yourself and upgrade your paint skills. So you can choose to focus, which I think increases your stamina. You can increase like the duration of your paints or how long it takes to recharge. So they have this mini RPG moment kind of interweaved throughout this really relaxing artistic game. And you create paintings and you can basically like use the assets in the game to create these paintings. It's so fun and innovative and cute, and I loved it very much.
Jenny,
There's a
I
story.
I
Oh,
do see
yes.
a dog. Can you pet the dog?
Yes, you can. Yeah,
Yes.
of
Okay.
course.
If you
Yeah.
were on the fence and you needed to know if there was a dog you can pet, there is in
Yes.
fact a dog, and you can pet it.
Yes, and
Confirmed.
there are very, very cute birds that you can, like, sit and, like, just observe. It's a very cute, cozy
Oh.
game. I will say I didn't really like the voice sounds that they had with the game. I ended up, wishing I could turn them down. I probably could have, I just didn't go into the settings because I was like, "I just wanna play." But there's some of the voice sounds for me weren't quite to my taste, but the gameplay was strong enough that I don't really like, that's fine. I'll go into settings later and adjust it. And this is developed and published by Impossible. And then the last game for now is Karmazu.
Oh my goodness. Okay, we ready for a little description here?
Hmm.
Share the love and die trying. Karmazu is a joyful, altruistic, cooperative platformer where up to 10 random players help each other with the unique abilities of 50 different characters, all for the sake of good karma.
So this is developed by Pasta Games, published by Devolver Digital, and I have been looking forward to this game since they announced it because this is online play meant and designed to be cooperative. If you are a jerk, you cannot finish the game. If you're a jerk, you actually end up like if you separate from the group, you end up not surviving. You know, it really incentivizes you playing cooperatively and well with others, which I loved. What's really fun is that each character has basically one ability that they bring to the table that allows them to help in specific situations for platforming. Like in the rounds that I was playing, we had a hedgehog that was a part of a team, and we couldn't jump up these really high platforms, but we realized the hedgehog, when it was next to these platforms, could make little spikes that we could
Oh,
stick to so we could jump up. And so each person ends up being quite critical in solving
oh,
these platforming puzzles.
cool.
It was so fun. You get to give people hearts when you appreciate them. As you help, you get hearts, which that's what they call karma. And I just thought it was so much fun. I cannot wait to play this. I would love to like, I don't know, figure out a way to play this with the whole community. I think
Oh,
this would
that'd be
be
so
great.
cool. Yes.
Especially because if you play online, it's 10 random players, but you can also put lobbies together. So you can play with your friends if you
I
want
was
to.
gonna
So
ask. That's very cool.
yeah.
Like the way this kind of looks is it's almost like Mega Man style level design, but the art style is stunning. Though these like neons and like I don't know, it's just coming through with this crystalline beauty that you don't get from a Mega Man game.
Yeah. Don't tell the Mega Man fans that. I'm sure they would be very sad to hear it. But you're right. What's really interesting is they have a lot of like black pixels. Like they use contrast with color and black really well. Like, because you have a super vibrant, like orange or super vibrant pink. And then the everything else around it is either outlined in that vibrant color or it's just like black.
Mm.
So you really see when the colors show up.
Interesting. I will just give them a shout out that if you pre order it, it's apparently 25% off right now on Steam.
Heck
So as of the
yeah.
12th of October.
Yeah. So and it's under $10, like full price it's going to be $10. The pre-order 750. We're not sponsored. They didn't tell us to say this. I'm just super stoked and excited about it cuz I love when games take cooperative play and especially online play and do something a little different with it. And now as I'm saying it out loud, I'm like maybe that's something we should explore in a month or two. You know, like some
Yeah.
like cooperative games or online or multiplayer games. See what we can do there, or games that explore cooperative play in unique ways. I think Journey is one that comes to mind. Um, I'll chew on this a little bit.
But
I'm saying it
but
out loud and I'm brainstorming it. I'm like,
but Jenny, if we play people with people online, they're gonna realize how bad I am at games, and then I'm gonna lose all credibility, and that's gonna be sad.
no, that's the thing. Everyone is like, you are all critical to the mission, and you really can't be bad at this game. I will
I will
tell
be
you,
the
playing the
hedgehog.
demo, yeah, I will tell you, playing this demo, it's not, it's really accessible to all types of players. So, and also, we don't judge people for being bad at games here.
That's right. So don't judge me, please. Oh boy.
So yeah, I think if folks have any additional Steam demos that they're super excited about, you can always message us, post later. We can always include that in a future podcast. But just keep your eyes out for future Steam Next Fest. I would imagine. I think the next one after October is usually February. February. So we'll be doing this again in February and. This time, I will say, for folks who remember last time, I created a Notion board and a form that we could submit, and it was really cool. I hurt my back the day I was planning on doing it, and then it completely lost. I just forgot because I was like, my back hurts and I can't really do anything else. So
I'm
didn't do
turning
it this time.
30.
Oh, it was the worst. It's also just a very silly thing that I did too. So yeah. So apologies if anyone was looking forward to the Notion board this time. We'll do it in February. But before we head on to this month's brew, I want to check in with Joel and see what you were reading, watching, and playing.
I don't have a lot to say about different games this week. Still playing BG3 and Minako. It's a lot of fun. I do
Mhm.
want to give a shout out to some of the shows that I've been into. So I don't know if
Ah,
we've talked about the other two, which is an HBO show. Kind of like the
I don't
story
think
of it's
so.
like imagine you're Justin Bieber's older siblings and he's just been
Oh,
discovered as like a 14-year-old and you're like in your 30s trying to like make it in New York. It focuses on those two and like the mother is Molly Shannon and it is just it is one of those shows like
oh,
similar to like
interesting.
the way The Office, especially in like mid seasons, was able to really nicely walk the balance between humor and kind of heartfelt
Mhm.
drama. This show does that incredibly well. So if you got HBO, would highly recommend the other two. And we don't talk about like series anime very much, but my God, I watched the new episode of Jujutsu Kaisen today before recording, and
Ooh.
yeah, I haven't seen myself like cheering and shouting at the TV since like Game of Thrones when like I don't know the Mountain is fighting Oberyn. So it's been a while.
Whoa.
And today I was like texting my brother. I'm sending screenshots. I'm like yelling at the TV. It was such a good episode. I was blown away and really
Wow.
enjoying like this show. If it sticks the landing over the next couple seasons, will be my new favorite anime of all time. Like it is so good.
Okay, I will say Jujutsu Kaisen is one of those shows that's on my list continuously of like, I will start to watch it. I want to watch it, but I think the fandom and the number, I feel like it's gotten to a point where I either have to jump in now or I will never do it. Kind of like with I don't know, literally every other anime.
That's so
So I'm
real.
curious, do you feel like if I started at season 1, like that's a good place to start and
Yeah.
that's well and good and I will not feel lost or sad or like I should jump in at season 2 cuz season 1 is
No.
bad?
I mean, this is like one of those shows. It's like your modern high budge anime experience where it's like there's very little filler getting in the way. I think we're in the middle of the second full season. We're like 30
Mhm.
episodes in, plus a movie. So it's not a huge lift if you want to hop in now, but like if this show continues with the quality that it has had, this is going to be your like the Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood 5 years from now, where people are like, this is the starting point.
Wow.
This is where you should begin your anime journey. Like,
Mhm.
it does such a great job, like, especially with like female characters. Like, one of the few anime that is not like hyper sexualizing them, gives them very cool storylines and plots. Like, I,
Okay.
yeah, can't, I know it's very popular, but I'm part of the bandwagon. I'm hopping
No.
on.
Hey, you know what? It's popular for a reason, right? And I think if it's popular and people are loving it, it's definitely a good reason to check it out at the very least and give it a chance. Um,
Yeah.
I will say I was won over with the live action of One Piece. The anime did not win me over. I do love the manga, so I am in kind of a anime fall.
And
I think
Anna
this
lol.
anal anal.
Oh wait, we got to be
Um
careful with that.
yeah, that's not good. Uh,
Didn't
but
feel
it
good
is
saying it.
tis this season. Tis the season is what I'm
That's
saying
right. That's
for
right.
new anime.
Yeah.
And I just finished a couple of sort of seasons on a few Netflix anime that have come out, so I am primed for that. And I'm not watching anything currently, so
Hop in. Let me know what you think. Get in the comments if you're in the community. Last thing, I know again I'm way late to this party, but I started reading the Raven Boys series this week, which is like
ooh.
mid 2010s. This came out and kind of is a semi magical take on like the writing style similar to like the Hunger Games, like that kind of like you
Mm.
start and you can't stop kind of book. So
Mhm.
midway through the first book, really enjoying it. I'll let you all know what I think way
Is it
later.
like a dystopic futuristic teen sort of
No, 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 no.
situation,
I mean,
or
just purely writing style is similar to Hunger Games. The
Ah,
setting
okay.
is like a bunch of privileged boys at like a prep school, and like a girl who lives in a family of psychics, and they're trying to like do some mystical things, and yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I actually have never read these, so I will definitely keep an ear out because I think after my current book, I'll probably want to move into some fiction again.
Fair. So yeah, what are you getting into right now?
Yeah, well, I'm not really watching anything. Really, I've just been digging into a book that just recently released called The Chaos Machine, the inside story of how social media, what does it say? The inside story of how social media like changes our brains or something like that, or
Whoa.
rewired our minds. Um, it's so far, I'm probably about halfway through one of the most interesting reads I have read in a long time, nonfiction in particular. The author is Max Fisher, and he does an incredible job of combining primary source accounts, just statistics from different news, documentation that has been leaked from a lot of these companies like Facebook and Reddit and Twitter and everything in
Mm,
between, and talking about the actual history of how these companies came to be so powerful and the people that had roles and major sort of plays within them, but also just some of the implications on what they mean for the future. It's been really good so far. I particularly appreciated the fact that, I mean, any book that talks about social media and culture that doesn't talk about Gamergate is incomplete, in my opinion. And like from the second chapter, there's a whole section on Gamergate.
wow.
And I don't know if it's just because the other books I've read haven't really either maybe been immersed or haven't explored it, but it's one of the first books that I've seen really tackle Gamergate and how it is sort of this foundational point in which radicalization in the US especially has blossomed. And so yeah, it's been a really really good read. I will tell you what happens when I finish it and what I think, but so far uh I can't put it down. I got it
Oh
yesterday and
wow.
I'm already halfway through. So
That's incredible. Wow. Definitely, I think Gamergate was the first time I ever heard someone refer to social justice as a pejorative, derogative word. And I was like, how is it possible that you can think of this as like, I don't know. So interesting. I'm glad they're hitting on
yeah.
it.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I found just and then I'll stop because everyone should just read it. I think it's one of those critical books that everyone should at least listen to the audiobook for or peruse at a bookstore. Don't if you don't want to buy it, just like skim some of the chapters. But especially in the first chapter, he talks about how identity is such a grounding element for
Mm.
social media. And when you look at every reactionary group, every hate group that comes about, identity is always at the core of it. And because social media amplifies our need to express identity and to contextualize our identity, this is a discussion about how like identity at its core. And it's just really
Oh,
fascinating.
wow.
It's I'm taking a lot of notes, lots of food for thought. So you'll all probably be hearing about it in the future in some form.
Cool. That's exciting.
Yeah. But other than that, not really playing. Other than the Steam Next Fest demos, haven't really played anything. Mostly been trying to read because it's important to read and not just look at a screen all the time. And yeah, I think that's kind of it for me.
Oh, I love it. And I can't wait to hear more about it as you dig more. I'm always interested to scratch your brain and hear about these super interesting things that you're learning.
Yes. And I think with that, let's head on to this month's brew. So, again, as I always like to just heads up for anyone who hasn't played through the section that we're discussing today, this is a full spoiler cast. So, we are digging into all of the elements of the game up until the point that I'll mention in a second. Uh, so if you want to avoid spoilers, if you haven't played and you're wanting to experience it fresh for the first time on your own, this is that heads up. Today we're going to be talking about right after the troll encounter in Bramble the Mountain King, and all the way through the end of the swamp encounter. So that's a pretty chunk pretty hefty chunk of
Pretty
game.
hefty chunk of game. Hold on
Yeah,
to
I
your
think
butts.
yeah, I think it ends up being like an hour and a half. So again, if you haven't played it and you're trying to gauge time before you can listen to this section of the podcast, it's about an hour and a half, I would say, of
I think it took
playtime.
me about 2, maybe a little
2?
longer, but
Okay.
I really struggled with certain parts of this, so,
Yeah, all right, we'll dig
yeah,
into
we'll dig
that.
in.
But before we get into the struggle parts, we begin by walking down a meadow.
Oh.
It's so beautiful. Um, yeah, could you just set the scene for us, Joel? It's
Uh,
beautiful.
so you've just met up with your big rock friend Lemus. He helped you like get out of your last little encounter with the trolls, and you begin walking through this beautiful field of flowers. And in the background is this like angelic, I'm assuming Icelandic. I didn't look at the artist who scored it,
Yeah.
but it's like this beautiful. It reminded me a lot of like Sigur Rós, if you guys were a part of that craze. You walk through, you hear this beautiful music in the background. Everything feels peaceful and light, like the sun has come up and it's morning.
Mhm.
And it's just I, I felt warm like walking around. Like it was like,
Yeah.
oh, this is the break that I needed after the last encounters with the trolls. So
Mhm.
that's kind of like the opening sequence here.
Yeah, I think especially after, the darkness and the intensity you feel with the trolls, sliding down into this glen and hearing this beautiful music is just so warm is exactly the word I would use for it. It's beautiful, and I posted in this week's pour over the link to a video. Someone uploaded the song as well, so definitely check it out if you want to just listen to it on its own because it is just very beautiful. And I wanted to highlight a comment underneath the video because it provided some context that I didn't know about the song and what it represents, and so wanted to read it out loud. It's from an Alexander Bjorling 6825. So, in Sweden, this song is sung and played in every school at summer break. We've all sung this many times. For those who know the lyrics, it's about flowering times, the rebirth of everything that died and withered away during winter, and most of all, the love of God and his beautiful creation. Hearing this while playing gave a very nostalgic feeling for me. Honestly, this entire game gives me nostalgia to the core. From the flower fields to the walks in the forest, the gnomes, trolls, Nacken, and all these things which are very present in every saga that any child hears. It gives me pleasant memories of my childhood, and I know many Swedes will relate to that. And just to finish it off, furthermore, I want to say that I'm happy that Nordic culture, nature, and our culture is shared like this to be enjoyed by all. That it is not only Vikings and war, but something as beautiful as deep green forests, flower fields, and the many frightening and beautiful creatures of Nordic folklore. We are often portrayed as cold and that we are not a very open people, so seeing this side of our culture being praised is very touching. So, again, that's a
Oh,
comment underneath the YouTube video that I linked in the newsletter this week. Uh, yeah, I think this was just a really nice extra context to have and appreciate the song.
I love that. It's like the exact inverse of Metalocalypse in season
Hmm.
1 when they go to Sweden and wake up a troll and then have to put the troll to sleep with like grandpa's guitars, which
Yeah.
are acoustic instruments.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah. So you walk through this place, and I think you have a comment here in the notes
Mhm.
around Lemus and where he comes from.
Yes. So Lemus is the rock giant, which originally you saved from the little pine cone figures. I thought this was a troll, like a different iteration of a troll. I found a video, and this is another one linked in the pour over this week if you get the
Get
newsletter.
the newsletter.
Um, the Lemus is a rock giant, technically, and was inspired by the John Bauer paintings that one of the examples you saw was in the kids' room as the game started, the one with all of the trolls. So this character isn't necessarily a direct reference to a specific Nordic folklore, is more of a reference to the paintings that were created that were inspired around the folklore. So this was actually, according to this video, more of a creation of the studio itself rather than like a specific thing that everyone in Sweden or in, sort of this area of the world would know.
It really reframes the idea of having a heart of stone, because if your
Right.
heart of stone was a stone like Lemus, you're doing pretty good, my friend. He's just such
I
a sweet
know.
boy.
Well, and I think what's kinda cool and what got me thinking is when I found out this rock giant wasn't a creation of history, but something that the developers created as they were imagining this version of the world, I was like, "Oh, this ties back to the conversation we had last week on how folklore perhaps evolves or how you take the knowledge
Mm.
from your culture and the ways that you make it your own and create different things to add on to it." So I think, again, it's just a really neat way to see this studio take on their own stories and add their layers to it.
It's one of the first early signs that you get that just because something is perhaps like monstrous in appearance, that doesn't necessarily
Mhm.
mean bad or evil, which I think is an
Right.
important theme that we're going to be hitting on kind of consistently
Mhm.
throughout this story.
Yes, definitely. Which also ties to the question you asked last week, where it's like, questioning the things that we assume to be moral or good or the lessons, like whether or not it actually is something we need to sort of internalize or if it's something we should question, which I think in general is just a really important thing to think about nowadays.
Yeah, but be wary
Hmm.
of propaganda, including folktale propaganda, perhaps.
Sure.
I think another really important moment, perhaps the most important moment of our entire podcast we're going to be covering today, comes
Hmm.
from this section of the game. And that is riding a hedgehog cart through the forest, through the river. It is the most adorable thing I have maybe ever experienced in a video game.
Yeah. This whole section, I think, again, it feels like a warm hug. It feels like a blanket. Um, the hedgehog, it's funny because I think the whole game, when you look at the whole thing, when you finish it and you sit back and you're like, what do I remember from this game? For me, at least, the hedgehog is one of those things.
Oh,
And it's wild because the amount of time the hedgehog and this beautiful flowering glade takes is so small compared to the horrors that you encounter for all the rest of the game.
so
But
true.
it's so impactful, and I can't get over it because it's maybe one of my favorite like cozy wholesome-esque moments in a game ever. Personally, I can't forget it. It's so good.
Yeah, he's got a little carriage on his back, and you're like riding around. I don't know. It's very sweet. And you're right. This moment is too short lived. You get a moment where you have a little baby gnome hugging a like grandpa gnome
Do you like
without.
reunite them or something, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's just like it's so sweet. You have a moment that took me way too long to figure out, where you have like these dandelions moving away from you, and you have to get them underneath
Mhm.
Lemus's nose while he's sleeping in order to wake him up so that he'll carry you over this like
Yeah.
next hurdle. It took me a long time to figure that out, but we got there. So yeah, it's just like this whole section is just like it's a breath of fresh air after having such
Mhm.
a prolonged horror section.
Yeah, and I think that's what for me works with this game overall. They have some areas that flounder in the end, but I think the play between tension and release and having these really terrifying chase sequences that are scary and then a moment where you get to really relax, they do a great job of it. But yes, it is short lived because as you are finishing up this lovely, cute moment with like the boys and babies are back and the gnomes are there and all of that, um, you hear, I think, like you hear some music playing in the distance. And Ule becomes sort of hypnotized, but in a trance, starts dancing and falls down into a tree.
Ule is confused. Bow, bow, bow. Ule is attacking himself. Like it's
Yeah.
very like the confused state has hit him.
Yeah.
And you find yourself kind of walking through. Again, you're still tiny compared to the world around you. You find yourself
Hmm.
walking through uh, some kind of combination between a home and a tree stump.
Right.
And you navigate through this, and you get a bit of lore through some pretty terrifying cave paintings.
Yeah.
You when you look in the background, there's like it's like someone took a red neon crayon and
Mhm.
drew like a devil with a violin and something that looks like little children following. And I was like, oh, we're getting a little Pied Piper thing here, maybe.
Yeah. I'm, like, wondering who did that. Like, was it Nacken who was like, "I'm gonna just draw my story on these walls in case someone ever stumbles upon them." Like, who drew these?
Yes, good question. Because I think it's like it's do you read his story before you encounter the monster? Does that sound right?
I think so, yeah.
So it's
Like,
like you
cause
get the cave
yeah, cause you
drawings.
hear the fiddling. Yeah, you hear the
Yeah.
fiddling, you fall down, and then that's what foreshadows what's coming up next, yeah.
Yeah, you see the cave drawings and then immediately find the book that tells the whole story. So it's like, if you had the book here, why are we doing the cave painting? I don't know. There's some I would love to let's dig into this lore.
Yeah. But yeah, we learn about this character, this man who um, was essentially bullied really heavily by his village, and he was. I think wasn't he an fiddler beforehand? So he had fiddling already. He had talent, and he's bullied by the villagers, and eventually he um, transformed into this twisted being, and he played until the villagers all like fell dead, essentially.
I think there is also an element of the woman that he loved,
Right, yes.
like it kind of scorns him or something like that.
Mhm.
This read to me as like, this is what happens when incels get what they want. Like, this is the monster that society has created.
So no sympathy for this man here.
Not for me, no. Like, I remember reading through it and being like, okay, like something about this feels off. And it just like the more I got into it, it's like obviously like bullying is awful and
Yeah.
terrible. But like the more I read about it, especially when it started talking about the love interest, I was just like, I'm sorry, I
Mhm.
don't have any sympathy for you and like how this
I
is all being
know.
resolved. So, yeah, which I think happens in most of the stories. You don't feel super sympathetic for the characters,
No. Yeah, and
even.
most well, and in most fairy tales, I think it's one of those cases where, in fairy tales, like, good is good and bad is bad. Like, this is one of those instances where I'm like, "Yeah, like you said, bullying's bad, but this reaction is a bit egregious to what maybe you've experienced."
Yeah, it's a little off, and I pulled some screen grabs, and it's like literally very early on, it's like, yeah, he loved like the first thing you learn about him is in his past life, Naken was a simple man that loved playing his violin, but the villagers did not appreciate his talent. It feels like he wrote that. You know what I mean? Like, you just don't appreciate my talent, is what it is. Like, that's the problem. Maybe I'm just projecting something into that. I don't know, but that's that's how I felt when I read that section, his whole story.
Yeah, no, and that's I mean, who knows? And I'd be curious too if someone who grew up with this story, perhaps, and maybe depending on the region, there are like slightly different takes. I was trying to look up and see if there was any stories online that people had copy and pasted that were like original the lore of the Naken.
Oh,
And
interesting.
I couldn't find any stories in their entirety, I did see some instances of people mentioning Nakken as a more sympathetic character where he was like someone who drowned because of this like mistreatment and now has been cursed to like play and lure other people to drown. I've seen more of it has led toward the malevolent spirit kind of vibe, but I'm curious to know if anyone who's grown up with this maybe has different feelings, because I
Mm.
also very felt like you where I was like, this guy, oh my gosh, like this is an evil spirit who's not doing this in a way that makes me sympathetic to him.
Yes. And so a quick correction first. So after you
Mhm.
see those like red cave paintings, you do encounter Naken and then you find his book
Oh,
and then you
okay.
encounter him again.
Okay.
But his book is like even like literally he marched into the village playing forbidden melodies that made everyone dance until their flesh and bone got worn down. And he's just like sitting there smiling like the Joker or something.
Yeah,
I
no.
don't yeah, I'm just not feeling a lot of a lot of sympathy for this particular character.
No, me neither. But my goodness, this encounter, the first time you encounter Nacken, such an impactful moment. So cool because you know something's afoot and it's weird. And we talked about this in the Discord forum as well. But there's this interesting play between you're in the light,
Hmm.
it's the daytime, and you've just had these really beautiful, cozy moments. So it feels kind of like you should be okay, but there's definitely something not good over there. So there's this nice unsettling feeling in the pit of your stomach. And I love the way they did that because it then teaches you as a player daytime is not safe anymore. You are in a different part of the wood.
I think it's really good. I also think it forces us to grapple with like uh darkness is not inherently bad and light is not inherently
Mhm.
good, which
Yeah.
we keep circling around this question because I remember feeling the same way where I was like, "Oh, but like yeah, I'm kind of falling down this thing and like I'm clearly confused, but like I can't encounter a monster right now because it's daylight outside and good things aren't in the daylight." And it's like, "Nope,
Yeah.
the rest of this game you're going to be seeing shit day, night, all the time."
Awake, asleep, yeah,
Yeah.
everywhere.
Exactly. Exactly. Oh
Yeah,
boy.
so but it's a really I love the way they did that. I think the leaping again, leaping from lily pad to lily pad, the first time you do it is this beautiful moment. You're with your sister. This time you're leaping from lily pad to lily pad to save your life, because the Naken is coming for you. You trudge through the mud, which is super effective. Oh my gosh,
Oh.
anything that slows you down as a player, and they do it intentionally. They design it so that you can get through, but it feels agonizing to wade through the mud. I loved it. Um,
Yeah.
it's just a really good section, except for one part for me, at
Yeah.
least.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so trudging through the mud, great. Lily pads, awesome. I feel like the momentum was there. And then there's a section where you climb up sort of on the banks of the lake, or the river, or wherever you're at, and you have to hide between and behind rocks as he does like swoops of sound blasts from his fiddle. And if you aren't exactly where the game wants you to be behind the rock, you are knocked out and ragdolled off, and poor Ule just dies again and again and again. For me, at least, he
Yeah.
died many
Yeah, yeah,
times
yeah,
at
for
this
sure.
part.
Yep. And for you, like in the community, like people weren't really loving the like ragdoll action of the whole
Well, I
experience.
think I forget who said it, but I think someone said it was actually kind of funny. Because it is. It's I think for me, it also took me out because you're like in this intense moment, and then the character just kind of like just kind of ragdolls away, which I'm like, I don't know how else you would design it, but it is sort of this like, oh, takes you right out of the moment.
I totally feel this, and like they reuse this mechanic a few times in the game where it's like you have to run and hide behind a thing while some like
Right.
area of effect swoops around you. And I feel like other parts of the game do it in a way that is a bit more serious. And yeah, I agree. I hadn't really thought about it until you brought this up, but I do think there's something that's a little like the physics of it all, just like it almost looks like if you remember like flash games back in like high school you play online, it's like
Like Happy Feet, is that what it was called?
yes,
Yeah.
yes. That's kind of what it's like. Your body is like comically folding in weird ways because you
Right.
couldn't make the jump over the thing or landed on a spike or whatever.
Yeah. So I think someone who, again, I'm sorry, I forgot who mentioned it in the Discord, but that ragdoll effect definitely took me out, especially because I saw it so many times in this section, or it felt like so many. But
Ugh.
yeah, I think as you escape, I guess anything else you want to talk about with Nakken?
No, I think we hit the high notes there.
Awesome, nice. As you escape, Ule is cold, tired, fatigued, and you see a vision again of the ridge. This is the ridge that we originally saw Lillimore at when we started the game, but instead of being in color and having our sister there, things are looking quite different. There's no color, the whole thing's in grayscale. Lillimore isn't there, but there are brambles as you get to the top that encroach closer and closer in.
Yes, and it kind of opens like what felt to me very much like a dream sequence. This whole next section of the
Hmm.
game as you're kind of moving through, the grayscale is there. And as you're wandering through this piece, it seems to be building tension again. Like, hey, you just survived this monster. However, we don't want to let up on the tension. And I think the grayscale accomplishes that. I think the music
Mhm.
accomplishes that. And that kind of leads to a moment of lightness.
Yeah, I wanna take a pause though, because 'cause I'm curious where you're at and how you feel on, at this point in time, if you feel like this game is a dream, like, is Ule dreaming all of this, and he's actually in his room safe and sound, sleeping in his bed, or do you think this is actually happening?
I took a realism approach that like
Mhm,
this is actually happening to this person, this character. I like the idea that this is a story that's being told. Like we have a narrator. The
mhm.
characters don't really talk normally. Like dialogue is done via the narrator. I
Yeah.
like the idea that we are part of a story that's being told, but like from the
Mhm.
perspective of this character, if if I if the game ends and it's like and it was all Ule's dream, I think I'd be pretty unsatisfied.
Yeah, same. Cool. I was just curious as to what you were
Yeah.
thinking. But yes, you're right. Did you wanna talk about sort of this warm moment that happens?
Yeah, so as you're moving through this kind of nightmarish experience, you then open up into like a glade with kind of a pond, and on the bank of that pond
Mhm.
is a young girl, kind of bathed in light, white clothes, blonde hair, and this is Princess Tuve, and she, it turns out, is going to be kind of a not a guide, but a friend to you for the game now.
Mhm.
And she gives you this glowing stone, which we haven't seen in a bit, and kind of imbues it with her light. And it's something that we kind of hinted at last time. This like statue where he first found the light stone. I my assumption is that that is a statue of
Yes.
Tuve, right?
Yes, yeah.
It's just like a really nice way, I thought, to like introduce the lore of a character and foreshadow them coming in. And
Mhm.
then meeting her as a real like flesh and blood character later. I just thought that was such a really cool way to introduce them.
Yeah, I think there's always, at least in fairy tales that I'm familiar with, there's always that sort of like guiding light character. I feel like usually a woman or a girl, bathed in sort of a white light that's meant to sort of take the hero and take them into moments of light whenever things are dark. What's really cool, this was maybe one of two actual full fairy tales I was able to find when looking it up, because there's, I don't know if I'm just putting in the wrong search terms, but my goodness, it's a bit hard to find some of these tales in their entirety. Um, because I was like, "Who is this girl?" Because I think the game, the again, one of the I think one of the strengths of the game, but also a weakness of the game, is that there is no context for anything you meet.
Mm.
So as a player, especially the first time I played, when I went through this, I was like, I know this girl is the one from the statue, but what does she have to do with anything?
What's
I
happening
have
here?
no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, no idea. I know she's helping me. I hope she doesn't betray me and turn into like something dark later, but I don't know. And so you mentioned, because otherwise we don't really know that she's a princess, but she is, according to this fairy tale that I found, was Princess, I think, Tuve Star. Um, and there is a fairy tale written by, um, oh darn, I totally don't have. Oh, Helga Jellin, I think is how you pronounce her last name, with illustrations by John Bauer. Again, John Bauer is this illustrator that we keep seeing coming up. So, super influential guy in terms of visualizing these Nordic tales. And the story of this girl is that she befriends this moose named Scut, and they go on adventures.
Oh.
And throughout the adventures, a lot of sort of mishaps seem to fall on her. She loses her crown, she loses her clothes. And as they're sitting by this lake in the forest, and she's looking down into it, she actually loses her most prized possession, which is a heart locket that, like, I think it was her mother that gave it to her, and she loses it down into the water. And when Scott is like, "Well, are we going to move on? Like, are we going to get out of here?" She says, "No, I'm going to stay here until I can figure out how to get my locket back." Scott ends
Oh.
up leaving because the moose is like, I know that she's never going to get it from these waters. She's a lost cause, so I'm going to head out. And so that's why she's there waiting to and seeing if she can get the locket back. And so that's her story.
Incredible.
Yeah. And so again, just for pour over referencing, for anyone who wants to read the whole thing in its original form, I linked that in this week's newsletter. But I thought it was really cool because I have not been able to find like definitive fairy tales online or folk tales, and this was one. So that was just a really neat find.
Absolutely love it. It's kind of the moment too where like you kind of get to come back to being like maybe a hero in the story, because to this
Mhm.
point it's all been survival horror. And
Right.
now that you have this light, you are going to be put in the position where it's like you can do things and shape the world around you with the light. So now you get to be, it's like the world is not purely acting on you, you get to act upon the world.
Right.
Which kind of takes us to our next our next experience. um
Yeah.
so they immediately introduce you to this mechanic, which is when there are thick brambles around you that have little like white flowers on them, you can show your rock and it will
Mhm.
brighten the world and the brambles will leave. And this becomes kind of a central and important mechanic really throughout the whole rest of the game.
Mhm.
um, and you essentially find your way into a town that's been overrun by this bramble flower thing. Is that
Mhm.
kind of how you experienced it?
Yeah. That is, and I think this is where the pacing starts to falter a little bit for me, because this section with the town and the bramble felt very filler.
Yeah.
It was more for me as like, oh yes, we're not actually here to discover all sorts of magical creatures. We're not here to do that. We're trying to figure out a way to get through the bramble into our sister. So it served the purpose of reminding me of what we're actually here for. Um, but it was just kind of run around the rooftops, get rid of the bramble,
Yeah.
on to the next thing.
Is this where you actually learn that she is in the mountain? Is that around this time as well, or does
I
that come a
think
bit
it is.
later?
I think it's a little bit after, but
Okay.
yeah, around this time.
Yeah. So we like you finally have a destination you're trying to get to. So again,
Right.
you are now an actor. You're an actor within this world.
Right. But yeah, I don't know. Did you have any other thoughts on this section?
No,
This was kind
it
of
was interesting, like kind of jumping around. Again, you're doing the like you're hiding behind things as like some area of effect is coming through. I never got
Mhm.
hurt in this section, so I don't really know what happens. Like one of the only sections
Oh,
I didn't get hurt. So
dang. This one was the second area where there's a one part that I had to do maybe 3 or 4 times because
mm.
I just could not get the timing. All that happens is the bramble just comes up and kinda consumes you and everything
Oh,
on the rooftop.
oh,
Yeah, it's
okay.
alright. Um, but yeah, I don't know, it just this felt, especially after the really good emotional ride that we have been taking, this felt very flat to me.
It slowed the pace down, but I will say this from like a storytelling perspective, it makes the rising tension of the next
Right.
section really impactful in a way that I think if you just went straight from Tuve to this next section,
Yeah,
it probably would not have been as
that's true. I do agree with that, and again, I think it does serve the purpose of reminding you what you're actually here for. Because again, I forgot, so I'm glad the bramble reminded me,
thanks,
but
Brambles.
but yeah, the next section,
Ugh.
uh, is perhaps I think it's tied for me as one of the most intense sections of the entire game.
Totally agree. I would
Yeah,
actually consider this the climax, like, of the
yeah,
game. This is the turning point.
yeah,
Everything from here on out is kind of falling action.
mhm,
So you begin working through, is it like swampy waters? Is that like through the bramble and into the
yeah,
swamps?
yep.
God, so set the scene for us. Like, what do you remember? Like, what stood out to you from that experience?
I mean, well, you start by you're walking through some wooded areas too. So you don't immediately go into swamps. There's woods, there's brambles. You're kind of cutting through everything. There's other small puzzles and smaller interactions that happen. But you eventually stumble upon a cabin sort of in this wooded area that leads out into the swampy area with docks that help you that you walk on to stay on top of the swamp bog. And in this cabin, It's the first time we've really seen anything overtly occult and not like maybe naturally
Mhm.
occurring.
Mhm.
Uh, we see books with rituals, inscriptions. You're actually part of getting through this cabin is recreating the runes on the doors to unlock them. And there is the sound of, I believe there was a sound of a baby crying, and also you see a midwife upstairs. And so
Mhm.
this is just continuously filling you with dread because nothing good can come of this place. Like it's very clear the way that they've staged it. Nothing good can come of this.
And your size relative to the world around you has shifted at
Is
this point. You're like
yes.
normal size
Yeah, that's a
compared to
good
the world
detail.
around you. And so it's like, again, to me, reinforcing like you are now an actor upon the world. There are things that you are going to be responsible for. And the thing
Mhm.
that Ule become like assigns to himself is this baby is in danger from this midwife. You see like information that like there's a spell that requires a baby to be killed in order for something to happen. You don't
Mhm.
really know what. And so Ule, according to the narrator, has decided, like, I'm going to try and save this baby.
Mhm. And yeah, this whole section gets super intense. When I was talking about the content warnings at the very start of this is like a big chunk of that is crammed into this section. As you're walking through and following the midwife, trying to figure out how to save the baby, you do walk through water where there's this like kind of unknown shape that chases you, which is
Hmm.
totally unnerving. Um,
Hmm.
there's a track on the game soundtrack that I forget what it's called, but basically it loosely translates to like water snake when I Googled it. So there's like some sort of snake like thing that chases you. You never really see it. I never got caught by it and I was never
Yeah, me
tempted
neither.
to see what happened because
Yep.
it scared me too much. Um and as you're walking through the waters, you also see these dark silhouettes and spirits. And when looking this up, just to provide some of the context for you all, these spirits, because of the rituals that the midwife and this witch have also cast in the past, these spirits represent the spirits of murdered infants. And they are called mealings in, I think, Swedish. And there's actually a track. The reason I was able to identify it is because of this one YouTube video that I'll link into the newsletter, and the creator mentioned it's also referenced in the soundtrack. So that's the connecting dots that confirms that's what these represent. And so you know that you're in a place where many children have been killed. You know that you're in a place where Ule as a kid is in danger, especially. Um, and you see this figure as you're walking through the swamp, hopping on the docks, trying to make it, which was very difficult. I will say I could not see anything. I even turned the brightness up, and it was really hard for me to
It was
see.
tough. Yeah, I totally agree.
Oh, but as you get sort of to the end of the first major section of the dock, you see what looks like a almost a skeletal woman's figure with a animal head or an animal
Hmm.
skull hanging up in the water. And the game is like, you should throw rocks. I forget what you throw at it, or you shine your
You
light
shine
on
your
it or
light. There's
something.
like crows on it, and you like shine your light to move the
That's
crows
what it
away.
is.
And you're
Yeah.
like, oh, puzzle solved.
Because
So you
why?
yeah, you like
Why?
you're on a raft that's like attached to a rope, and you start pulling yourself midway into like deeper water,
Hmm.
and all of a sudden the midwife who was the thing hanging on the scarecrow stock is gone, and you are now in a boss battle.
Yeah. And I think, I'm not entirely sure. I think the midwife is separate from this skeletal thing because the skeletal thing was called the Sherhexa.
Oh,
Um, and so that is like the main witch. And the because the midwife you see later from the tree,
interesting.
hanging on
I
the
heard it was
tree.
like the midwife is stopping you from getting to the
I
swamp
think
lady boss. I believe you. I
yeah,
just
I don't
no.
know. Or maybe are we thinking of the wrong thing? Because I think the one with the demon like animal head horns, that's the Karraxuh,
Oh,
from what I looked up, and that's, like, the witch, and then the midwife was the facilitator for the Karraxuh.
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So you in this boss battle, which is maybe the scariest thing I've ever been a part of,
Yeah.
you are in the middle of this water. It's dark, and you have to track the ripples in the water because at random
Mhm.
points, the Sharhexa animal skulled woman demon is going to pop out and grab you, and that kills you. And
Yes.
the thing is, sometimes the ripples in the water don't lead to her popping out. They lead to babies in like a basket that pop out of the water and start crying. And so
Mhm.
you can't just like assume that the ripples are going to lead to the baddie coming out. And
Right.
I died so much in this. Like this part
Really?
took me forever.
Oh, wow. Dang. See, and this is one area that I didn't die. I, like,
Ugh.
got I was able to get through without a death, fortunately.
It was one of those things where, like, it scared me every time. It was like the worst Jack in the Box. It's like, you know what's going to happen. You know what's going to happen. And yet, every single time it made me, like, jump scare.
Oh, man. Yeah, I hated this section, mostly because I don't like things, like, popping out, like Jack in the Box style, like you said, but fortunately, reflexes seem to work well for me, and I was able to get through it
Well
pretty
done.
smoothly.
I'm hugely
Yeah.
impressed.
Oh my goodness. I mean, again, I struggled very, very much during the other like, I can't believe you got through the bramble part, no problem, because that one took me, again, multiple tries. Um,
I don't
but
know.
as you finish that, you finish your crossing, and that's when you end up, I believe, at a large tree, and you see the midwife's body hanging with these 2
Yes,
crows
you're
sitting
right.
there,
Mhm.
and then you also see, is that when you see the body of the baby?
Yes, and you
Yeah,
have this very, like, not subtle, but a small moment
right.
where Ule finds the body of this baby and gives it like a burial. And it
Mhm.
was one of those things where it's like when kids like take on more responsibility than they should have to,
Ugh,
it gets
yeah.
me every time. And that was how
Yep.
I felt in this moment.
Yep, it was super hard to watch. I got very choked up watching it as well. Uh, what I thought was interesting, because this, I was so emotional, I didn't register necessarily what the narrator was saying, and so when I was looking this up and learning about the Mealings, which again were the spirits of murdered infants, as they say in Sweden, uh, or at Swedish folklore at least, one of the ways that you can free these spirits is by giving them a name or by burying them in like
Oh,
consecrated ground. And so
wow.
in doing that, Ule is like at least freeing one of the spirits before he moves on to his main quest of finding his sister.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Yes. So you get this like consecrated moment. Like I had no idea. Like it didn't occur to me until the narrator said like, and now this baby will not become one of the spirits. I was like, oh wow. Like again,
Mhm.
I'm an actor on the world now. Like what I do has consequences. I thought it was like a really
Mhm.
interesting way to pull that in and just heartbreaking all at the same time.
Mhm. Yeah, I feel so bad for this kid. The big thing that I ended this section with is, just I feel for Ule right now, and, unfortunately, things will continue to progress in a not great way.
Wait, what?
I know, unfortunately. We do have, though, a literal light, I guess, at the end of the swamp
A
instead of the
little
tunnel.
lantern at the end of
A
the
little
tunnel.
lantern, yeah. I am probably butchering this pronunciation as well. Again, sorry for anyone who does know all of these actual words and terms, but I think it's Lichtigub, the lantern man that we see in the distance as Ule is walking through the swamp. So we follow this lantern man, and that is where we ended this version or this iteration of our playthrough. Um,
Oof.
yeah, I guess what we talked a little bit about sort of the nature of bravery. I'm curious how you feel about Ule now as we have moved into the journey. We are now in
Hmm.
the thick of it.
That's interesting. I am this was a moment for me, and then the following sequence where I started to wonder if Ule was someone other than who we've been believing him to be, like some,
Mm.
kind of peasant child. And like I won't talk about whether or not this theory bore out, but I did have a theory at this point that I was like, I wonder if Ule is some like incarnation of some like evil presence or something, and like going
Ooh.
forward, is he going to be some moral actor that is going to make decisions that can harm the world?
Mhm.
Throughout the whole first part of the game that we discussed, it's because the world is acting upon you outside of becoming friends with Lemus. Uh, like you don't really have much of an impact on the world around you, and this
Mhm.
was the moment where I was like, wow, like I defeated this demon lady in the swamp, and I am making my way towards this destination to like make a difference. And this got me wondering, is like, man, are we in a fractured fairy tale situation? Is this going to be like some big, am I the bad guy? Am I the asshole? Uh, so yeah, that's kind of like some of
Yeah.
the things that were teasing in my brain as I got to this part.
Yeah. One of the things I think that's absolutely where my brain was as well at this part in particular, where it's like we've also seen these hints of Ule, like depending on what you did as a player a little bit, but the game sets you up to, uh, for example, be a bit careless with the lives of the baby gnomes, for example. And so there are small instances of not good things happening with Ule at the helm. And so I feel like it does sort of set you up to wonder what is his role, where does he really stand
Mm.
in that question. So yeah, it's something that I think is really interesting to pay attention to. Side note, I also asked you about where in time do you think this game is? I'm still genuinely trying to figure this out, but the dress of the what is it? The Cher Hexa, the demon lady, I looked it up because I was like, this is kind of modern. Like it looks like a nurse's outfit. And so
Hmm.
I tried to
Hmm.
Google image search and I found out that the outfit itself looks like a VAD war nurse from like World War One time period. And so for me, this brought up just a lot of questions. So VAD was voluntary aid detachment, and it was like a civilian unit that provided like nursing support in the UK and like other countries during World War One in particular. I think maybe World War Two, but I think that coupled with some of the toys that Ule had on his shelf makes
Hmm.
me feel like this is a World War One maybe time era, like early 1900s ish.
That is fascinating. I definitely have felt like a certain degree of like vertigo or something as I've played this game,
Yeah.
where it's just like I see things and I'm like, oh, are we like late 1800s at this point? Like,
Right.
what's going, like, this looks like a barricade from the French Revolution. Like, what's going on here?
Right.
Because all, like, whenever you're engaging with the monstrous world, it feels like, I don't know, time beyond reckoning, like some sort of like
Right.
medieval time of stories when magic felt very real, or
Mhm.
feels real in retrospect. So I don't know. I definitely think that's something worth pondering, is like the time frame for all of this.
Right. Yeah, and it's not something that I think really impacts like the story as a whole, but it is a really interesting choice because I'm thinking of all the things that you could have given for this demon witch woman to wear, why this nurse's uniform
Mm,
from this time period and why
hmm.
do we have these moments where time doesn't really have like it's very ambiguous in some respects, and in some places I feel like maybe it could be the 17 or 1800s, and then some places I'm like I think this is World War One, like 1900s. Yeah, so it's just
Something's going on.
something for me. I'm like I don't know what it means, but I feel like it was done intentionally. So yeah.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Hmm.
But yeah, I guess Any additional thoughts you wanted to share before we wrap up?
No, I think, next week as we get into some of the final parts of this game, there's
Oh,
gonna be a lot to discuss and some, like, very
mhm.
deep philosophical questions that I'd love for us to dive into, but yeah, I think,
Yes.
we covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah, and for folks following along with the playthrough, again, you can play at your own pace. Please do. I think again, this is a game that benefits from maybe actually two sit down sessions or one,
Mhm.
truthfully,
Yeah.
because you can feel some of that pacing and tension. But if you're following along exactly, you can play until the end. Actually, next week is our final spoiler cast deep dive on the game. Um, we are going to also have our monthly community hangout on October 28th, 2023. I'll say the year just in case you're listening to this way in the future. So, if you're interested in hanging out with us, talking about the game in person, maybe doing some jigsaw puzzles as we talk, I don't know,
Hey.
mark your calendars and be sure to stop by the Discord. Anything else? Am I forgetting anything?
I don't think so. Definitely join the
Okay.
Discord. Definitely go to geeksandgrounds.com and get into that newsletter. There's so many rich pour over materials that Jenny's been prepping for us in the community. So definitely check
Oh,
those out.
yeah. And yeah, I think that's it. So, again, if you haven't followed us, find us at geeksandgrounds.com. Leave us a good review, leave us a comment if you're watching on YouTube. And Joel, take us away.
Yeah, I guess all I can say is if you find yourself in the swamp, you can either kill the nurse or nurse your coffee. I don't really care which
Oh,
one.
gosh. We'll see you all next time.
Bye.
Bye.